Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I am particularly excited about today's episode because we've got an incredible guest. We're going to be talking about all things AI. Even more than that, we're going to be talking about all things business strategy, and you all have heard my love for that Albert Einstein quote of if you want to impress somebody, make it complicated, but if you want to help somebody, make it simple. And I feel like today's guest encapsulates that in so many different ways when it comes to actually simplifying and turning business strategy and advice into actionable steps that actually yield growth, which is what we're all after. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Eric Levine. Eric is the founder of StratEngine AI, which is a new SaaS platform that helps consultants and business leaders turn complex problems into clear, actionable strategies in minutes. Before founding StratEngine, Eric spent years at Meta leading global strategy and operations initiatives, driving hundreds of millions in growth and efficiency across teams. Drawing on that experience, he built StratEngine AI to bring that same strategic rigor and clarity to independents and small firms, automating the research, frameworks, and presentations that typically take days. That's probably downplaying it, probably weeks of manual work. Eric's work sits at the intersection of strategy, technology, and creativity, helping people spend less time formatting and more time thinking. And I feel like that sets the perfect scene for our conversation. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my conversation with Eric Levine. All right, Eric, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Heck yes. I feel like you and I are going to get to geek out about all the things that we love, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners join us when we talk business strategy, AI, technology, all those things. But we've got to start with you, Eric. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Eric? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, so I actually started my career as an accountant. I knew immediately that was not my calling, but I was a philosophy major in college. I had no idea what else I wanted to do. So it was a good way to get my foot in the business door, at least. And then through my career journey, I ended up, as you said, at Meta in the strategy and operations practice, which philosophy was surprisingly relevant to. After doing that for a few years, I decided to go out on my own venture. And now that AI is a thing, I'm able to run a AI company and be able to simplify a lot of the manual process that, strategy is a manual process even without AI. So, starting to build and help people out.
Yeah, I love that, especially because you and I were obviously talking a little bit off the air, and I threw a little bit of shade at the fact that most people are using AI in its most elementary form these days. They're firing up ChatGPT or their favorite LLM, and they're asking it basic things like, generate a social media calendar for me for the next 30 days, and it spits out generic results. And that's why so many people who are leaning on it for that reason, they sound like everybody else who's simply using AI. What's your take on where we are at a really macro level when it comes to AI usage, and especially in the business world? How far along are we? What are those untapped opportunity areas?
Yeah, I completely agree. I saw the same thing when I quit Meta. A lot of the AI products coming out now, they're really geared towards the tech side of the tech industry, helping engineers, helping the development side. And there's definitely a lot of value there. And it's the easiest entry point because they're building tools. And so it really helps them out a lot. But what I've noticed is there's a lack of products that are really helping the business side. The business side in general is still trying to figure out what goes in ChatGPT, how can I use it? It was actually LA Tech Week last week, and a lot of the business panels I was sitting on were visiting were a lot of, we're still figuring it out. We don't really know how it works. Whereas all of the tech panels were heavily okay, this is how we use this. This is how we provide value. And so being able to see both sides, I was okay, there's actually utility in AI here beyond just plugging things into chat. They're actually really powerful data analysis engines and pattern recognition. I can build a product that actually helps business people and provides value. I just need to repackage it in a completely different way. And so today you'll see like a lot of ChatGPT wrappers or LLM wrappers, which are basically just fancy prompting things. But those won't last that long. I think they have kind of a shelf life, and when the business side starts to catch up. And so what I really wanted to do in StratEngine AI was build a proprietary engine that can really do the heavy lifting and the analysis and really take these complex business problems and be able to solve it with AI in a way that AI today is incapable of doing. For example, like if I were to say to ChatGPT, like, I'm trying to analyze a market entry strategy using Blue Ocean Strategy Framework, and I've done this, it'll give you 50% accurate results. The competitive research is inaccurate, it hallucinates, and you're asking it to do a really heavy process all in one shot, but it doesn't know how to go through that entire process. So the alternative is that you got to just prompt the crap out of it in continuous conversation to get to the results that you need. But that's not really that much more efficient either, because you got to know what and how to prompt the entire process. So what I wanted to do with StratEngine AI is take that entire process and package it into one cohesive analysis engine. So that way you just enter the business problem and the product will take care of the entire process itself and yield really strong results. I've even added in features to make sure that like implementation is right. And then like once the strategy is done, it'll export it straight into slides. So there's an engine that's completely just for the presentations.
Yeah, I love that, Eric, especially because, I mean, you heard me tease at the very top of today's episode. I'm a big fan of quotes. I'm a big fan of frameworks. Those things, I mean, it comes from people far wiser than us, and we get to lean on the existing research, the existing case studies, the existing knowledge base that's out there in the world, but only if we know how to use them. Like you called out the Blue Ocean Strategy, for example, incredible book. I mean, one of my favorite books is The One Thing by Gary Keller. There's so many different frameworks and so many different strategies. And I find that when I use ChatGPT as a thought partner, I have to prompt it with what line of thinking I want it to follow. So I will say, hey, if I was leveraging Atomic Habits. If I want to look at my productivity through the lens of Atomic Habits, I have to prompt it with that. Talk to us about the difference in the importance of the StratEngine AI approach, because it sounds to me like it knows all of these business things and it can take me there because I don't know what I don't know.
Totally. And I think one of the important things to hit on here is that, like, even if you do know the framework to use as a basis, there are so many pitfalls in using these frameworks. I mean, like, even I at Meta, like, would fall into the pitfalls sometimes. So what I really designed StratEngine AI to do is it has an entire library of frameworks, and I made sure that the AI really knows how to use each one of the frameworks, what their purposes are, and what their utility really is. And so when you're entering a business problem, it'll give you a few options of frameworks that you can use. And by having that background and context of the framework already, it'll be able to give you the best practice immediately without you having to guide it. That's one of the things that's an issue with the chat model right now, is that they're overly agreeable. So like, I'll put in incorrect recommendations or adjustments just to see if it'll agree and guide me down a path. And it almost always does. So what I really wanted to design is like something that is mitigating the risk of like just agreeing and picking a framework. Like, it knows what the right cohesive set of frameworks are. And as long as you pick one of the options that it gives you, you're in a safe space and it's going to apply the framework correctly.
Eric, it seems to me, hearing the way you talk about StratEngine AI, it seems to me like you're super intentional and reflective about the beef that you have with the current AI landscape. I love that you've already thrown shade in two ways that I'm going to call out. You've already thrown shade at how many AI wrappers are out there, and you're right, they're a dime a dozen at this point. I feel like it was a true novelty when the OpenAI API was first out there, and heck, I know of at least one of the companies that is merely a wrapper and achieved unicorn status. And now they're struggling to find funding because wrappers anyone can access the API or just the web UX at this point. So you've already thrown shade there, and I really appreciate that because I think that that's insightful about the AI landscape at large. But then secondly, I'm hearing some frustrations there about how specific our prompting needs to be. Am I hearing these things correctly in the fact that those two frustrations and observations are a big factor into the way that you're thinking about growing your new SaaS company?
Totally. I mean, for a very, very short stint, was hired as a ChatGPT model trainer. And what I realized through that process is that AI as a whole is just pattern recognition. So that's why some AI models will be able to solve your problems and other ones won't, is because the logic pattern that it takes to solve the problem is part of the training data. And so when I was doing the training model for ChatGPT, the business strategy logic flow wasn't something they were really pursuing as a cohesive model for training. And a big reason for that, which I totally understand and agree with, is that there's too much wiggle room. You needed to have only one answer, and all the answers needed to be completely self-contained and be able to rely on itself. But that's not how strategy works. Strategy is inherently qualitative, and there's a lot of adjustments and wiggle room and gray areas. And so it takes a lot of judgment to be able to come up with a really good strategy. And so the models themselves, because they're not trained in that way and don't have those patterns, aren't going to be able to do the full strategy out of the gate. So you need to know how to prompt it and guide it to the logical pattern and the logical process that you need to do to get the high quality results that you want. And as long as you do that, they're really, really, really powerful. They can find an immense amount of data and process immense amount of data, but you need to give them the correct data to do that work.
So let's go there then. Let's talk about strategy, because obviously that is so important in all of our businesses. And I feel like historically, strategy was this weird field that was somewhat gate kept. And I remember back in 2015, I launched my first online course. It's called Blogging Your Way to Profits. That course does not exist anymore, but it's because my first business back in 2008 was a blog. It was a soccer blog. And so in 2015, I packaged up everything that I learned from growing a multi-six-figure brand in a business that had 3.5 million visitors a month into an online course, because strategy was hard to find. I remember I was buying books at Barnes & Noble back then, trying to find these strategies. And Eric, if I had more funds, I could have hired a consultant. I could have gone a lot of different directions. Now it feels like strategy is at our fingertips. Ideas are at our fingertips. It's democratized through the knowledge bases that can come from AI. Is this the death of consultants when it comes to a strategy perspective? Is this a replacement? Is it an enhancement? I'm so curious how you view that landscape.
Yeah, it's a good question. Strategy is one of those terms where it's sexy to say that you do it and everybody wants to say that they do it, but there's so many different definitions of it. Strategy in marketing is more customer acquisition focused and go to market focused, whereas strategy at the corporate level is a lot more market entry strategy or new product launches and things like that. I definitely don't think that this is a death for consultants in any capacity. I think that consultants can use this as a time-saving tool and apply their own knowledge, which is what their real value add is. So they can get to the 80% strategy for them or the 90% strategy, and then add all of their really intense strategy experience or strategy consulting experience to fine-tune it for their specific clients. So it's really a time-saving tool for them. And then for anyone who isn't familiar with strategy and doesn't have the funds for an expensive consultant, they can do kind of the same thing in the sense of they can run the full strategy through StratEngine AI, get what they need as a great starting point if it doesn't get you all the way there already. And then they have their own internal knowledge of how the C-suite works or their company works, and they can make adjustments in conversation with the experts that they have in-house of what they're doing and what their business is doing. So it's able to straddle both lines, and for SMB executives especially, give them the best practice off the shelf. And then if they have something particularly more difficult, then maybe it makes sense to bring a consultant in. And then for consultants themselves, it's just a huge time-saving tool. So it cuts out all the manual slog of research and framework application and building decks, and allows them to take on more clients since they're saving so much time.
Yeah, and on top of that, something that really piques my interest is the fact that it's not only accelerating their process behind the scenes. But it seems to me like you put a heavy emphasis on the communication of these things as an output. It's not just about, having a strategy on paper, but I love that the fact that you're taking that and turning it into a presentation. It's somewhere I saw you articulate it. Users can go from idea to board ready output in minutes. And I think that can't be understated. I love the fact that you've emphasized it's not about replacement. It's enhancing the tools in their arsenal. Where's that come from, Eric? Because I don't imagine you at Meta presenting to the board, but clearly you understand the importance of what that looks like inside of so many different facets of the business world. Where's that emphasis come from?
Yeah, at Meta, I wasn't presenting to the board, but I was building decks left and right. And that was always such a frustrating time suck for me because it was extremely manual. Everybody had their stylistic layout opinions and narrative opinions. And even just having a full strategy brief that I had to put into slides, that's just a huge manual process that would take me 2 to 3 weeks just to get the first draft out the door. In a corporate setting or even a consulting setting, you have to be able to take really long, complex, detailed documents and distill them into several slides that get across the main points for an executive audience. Since they don't need to know the details, they need to know the highlights and direction and things like that. So it's a really important deliverable that you need to create, but there's no reason to spend that much time building those decks when you could be actually providing value in other ways. So it was really important to me when I was building this is just scratch that pain point for myself in the sense of I have the information. Decks should be pretty automated and be able to create pretty easily. All you need to do is draft the narrative and then just put the layouts together. So I really made sure to build the presentation engine in such a way that it just completely eliminates a lot of the manual formatting and editing and lifting that goes with presentations. So that way everybody who uses this can go back to actually providing value.
Yeah, Eric, hearing you talk about this stuff, I'm sure a lot of listeners are thinking, wait, Eric, we even talked about, are you a technical user? Do you have a technical background? Are you able to build all of these things? And I obviously know a little bit more about things behind the scenes. So talk to us about that, because a lot of people will feel like, holy cow, Eric is doing something very cool in his entrepreneurial journey. That's not attainable for me. I can't just build these types of things. What's that side of the business been like for you?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely not technical. Like I said, I was a philosophy major undergrad, and then I have a business degree. So when I was getting my MBA, it was all, you need to find a technical founder, you need to find someone who can do the tech. And that always stopped me from starting a business because it's just not something that I was going to be able to find. And I didn't even have a business idea that required it. But then when AI came around, we're all familiar with vibe coding. That's what I'm doing through all of this. I will admit that I've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit, and it's a little bit more than just plugging it into Lovable or something like that. But the way I got started with this is I'm a scuba diver pretty passionately, and the scuba diving apps that exist today are not great, let's say. They're not user-friendly. They're not giving me what I need. So I was okay, I'll just start building one the way I would want it to work. And so that way, at the very least, I have it for myself. And so I used Flutterflow for front end, which basically is a drag and drop UI editor. And then it writes all the code behind it. And it helps you link to various backends. It's super easy to build apps. I like it a lot better than Lovable or Bolt or whatever, because you can actually just build what you want it to build and put it the way you want it to look. You don't have to prompt your way through formats and UI like that. That to me was kind of overly simplistic, if you will. And so through this process, as I got more and more familiar with building the scuba diving app, it's called Scuba Zen, by the way, I was okay, now I understand how AI can help code and what it can actually do. And basically, vibe coding is just an architecture problem. You're giving the AI an architecture of what you want to happen and how you want things to interact and how you want the entire application to work. And then it just plugs in all the details. So as long as you keep in mind how architecture works and what you want it to do, and then continually test it, you'll be able to build anything that you want to build. So it's great to start simple, start small, like single page, 2-page apps for whatever small task it is. And as you start getting more and more used to it, you can start building more and more and making things more complex, until the point now where I'm using the same software development platform that software engineers use, but I'm still vibe coding through it. I'm just saying, like, I want the analysis engine to do X, Y, and Z. The process to do it is A, B, C. Can you help me figure out how to plug all these things in and make it work together?
Eric, you see, that's the coolest thing. That's why I so appreciate incredible guests like you coming onto this show, because it's not just what you say, it's those things that you're doing and that you share with us that I feel like really reveal the secrets to success. I'm not going to let that fly by and not go deeper there with you. The Scuba app, to me, that's so cool, because what may have felt fun for you in those moments, and what is very cool that you built out of passion, out of your hobby, to me what that shows is you learned tangible skills. You explored, you figured things out. I'm sure things broke along the way. Vibe coding is not the easiest thing in the world, as much as YouTubers say it. But I see that probably taught you so much stuff that, of course, plays into StratEngine. Obviously, everything that we all do in our lives all play into the way that we show up in our professional careers as well. Talk to us about that importance. Was that something that you were truly just playing with, or that you did say, hey, I want this to be a tangible app that a bunch of other people use? Or walk us through that Scuba app.
Yeah, so the Scuba app, like, I had that idea years ago. It came from the logbook applications not working that well and just being, like, not very user friendly. And so before AI existed, I was like, okay, there's no way for me to build this. I'm not going to hire a really expensive engineer to do this. I don't have the capital. So it just kind of sat on the shelf. And then after I quit Meta, I took a lot of time off. And so just to fill my time, I was like, okay, now that AI is a thing, like, can I build this? I wasn't even sure I could, but I was like, if there's ever a time to figure it out, it's now. And so I just started messing around with it. And because I had Flutterflow, it solved the front end UI problem that I was most scared of. And so I just started building it. And then I realized once I built that core functionality of the dive log, that there were actually a lot of other things I did to prepare for a scuba diving trip that there were no applications for. I had to keep track of my equipment. I had to keep track of my itinerary. I wanted to make sure I didn't lose things. And I wanted to use the data that I had from my previous dives to figure out where to go next. So it actually started growing into a more useful app just because I was playing around with it. But yeah, so it was started for fun. I didn't plan to start it as a business, but I don't know, I put some monetization on it, but, like, a lot of it's for free. I just wanted to release it and just have it as a passion project. And then as, like, I started getting that skill and, like, it started being built out and released, I was like, okay, this actually is a skill that I have now. And, like, sure, I don't know everything, and it was definitely not the most efficient way to build anything, but now I have a skill set and at least a baseline foundational knowledge in the B2B space. What would I have wanted at Meta? Let me start building that. And then that's what I started with in ChatGPT. I was like, okay, let's bring shape to a problem. Like, how do I start this business? What does the landscape look like? And I actually had to prompt ChatGPT through the entire strategy process to figure out the business. So I knew from the start how painful that was. And that already guided me of, like, okay, what are the features I need in StratEngine? And, like, what do I need to account for in the build of it? And then anything I didn't know how to do, like building the analysis engine in the software program, was extremely intimidating to me. But at some point, I was like, all right, I just got to roll up my sleeves, look up some YouTube videos. There's a huge plethora of forums, Reddit, YouTube videos to teach you how to do all of this stuff, especially with vibe coding becoming so popular now. And I was like, I just got to try it, and I'll just figure it out as I go. And then problems I run into, like, let's just search the internet to figure out if there's a way around it.
Yeah, gosh, I love hearing about this stuff. It's so cool getting that real life insight into just how you've been playing and how that play has come into obviously building an incredible business that we're talking about here today. But I really want to squeeze this question in before we get to the question that I ask at the end of every episode about your one piece of advice. But I'm super curious your take on this because it's an ongoing debate on the web right now that a lot of people historically have been obsessed with that metric of how many employees it takes to make $1 million in revenue. And of course, pre-internet, that number was, I think it was like 14 or something a few decades ago. But today, obviously, it's well known that one person can easily create, not easily, but one person is more than capable of creating a $1 million a year business. And now, thanks to AI, the reigning question is, when will one person create a $1 billion company, a unicorn? And I personally, I'm excited for when that's going to happen because I do think it's possible. Eric, you clearly lean on AI a lot. What's your take on that? As a solo entrepreneur, is unicorn status attainable where we already are in the world of AI?
I think it's attainable, but I think $1 billion is going to be hard. It's attainable in the sense of, I think where it really provides value is the cost structure of a company. Like when you start hiring employees and people to help you out, like that puts so much burden on your overhead, which affects your profitability. But if you can just do a lot of the work alone, your profit, I think the profitability of a company, your break even is almost immaterial. Like it doesn't cost anything to break even, so you can hit profit really, really quickly. And then when you start hitting profit, you obviously reinvest that profit into your own business, and then you can accelerate and grow it a lot faster. And then since you're a solo founder in this context, like you can hire agencies to do a lot of the work that might have employees otherwise. So you can still get help without having a huge employee base. And so I think that's really the only way you could get to $1 billion is by having all of that agency and contractor help. But it still counts as solo founder in that respect. I think that to do it like completely alone without any help, it's going to take a really, really long time, but it's for sure possible, especially because you can start automating marketing and all of the other functions. It just takes a really long time to build all of that stuff because as you're building marketing, you're not working on the actual technology, so you have to switch back and forth a lot.
Yeah, I love those insights. I love geeking out about this stuff, especially with someone like you who's deep in this space. And I also think that as agentic AI truly takes off, I feel like it's become a buzzword that everyone's talking about agentic AI, but very few platforms are actually doing that or making it useful. ChatGPT obviously already has its agent functionality, which all the YouTube videos that I've geeked out about, it's not quite there just yet, but it's cool to see the pace at which innovation is happening. And Eric, you of course are one of those innovators. So I'm very excited to hear how you answer this super broad question. I always ask it, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you are one of us, you are very much an entrepreneur doing really cool things in your space and thinking about how you can help other businesses grow as well. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I think my biggest piece of advice is really to look inside yourself and don't listen to the messaging we get in the like systemic narrative that we live in. Is like, listen to yourself, don't listen to anyone else. Look deep inside yourself and figure out like, okay, is this something that I really want to pursue? Am I passionate enough to do it? Because the entrepreneur journey is rocky at best. It's a roller coaster of emotions. So like you got to be able to buckle up because it's going to be a lot. But like, if you really believe in what you're doing, then you can be successful. And now with AI, you have the tools to vet your ideas, make sure that it's not overly agreeing with you, and like make sure that like you're going on the right path, and seek out as much advice as you possibly can to guide you. But as long as you internally believe it and that it's bringing you happiness, then it's absolutely worth pursuing.
Ooh, I love that advice. Eric, I feel like you just revealed a little bit of your rebellious nature, which of course makes you an incredible entrepreneur. Question everything. Don't necessarily accept those narratives. Look within for that passion, for that inspiration. It's been so cool to see how that's manifested in your own journey. And I'm also very excited for listeners to follow along with all the cool things that you're up to. It seems to me like you're not just doing this stuff because it has to be done and because you want to see it into the world, but it's so clear to me that you actually enjoy this stuff as well. You're mixing play with that work stuff. So Eric, for listeners who want to follow along in your journey, everything that you're up to with StratEngine AI, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, so StratEngineAI.com is the main website. And then if you want to email me directly, feedback, questions, anything, Eric, ERIC, at StratEngineAI.com.
Yes, and on top of that, listeners, I'm going to add this. I didn't ask Eric about it beforehand, but we're also linking to his personal LinkedIn down below in the show notes. So we're putting all of those links down below wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You can reach out to him individually. You heard how much he welcomes that engagement, so don't be shy in reaching out. Also, check out StratEngine AI. Don't worry about spelling or remembering it or any of that. You can click right on through from the show notes. Otherwise, Eric, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.